The EU AI Act is the world's first comprehensive binding AI law, and it is changing how organizations manage AI risk globally, not just in Europe. If you have any customer, operation, or AI system that touches the EU market, this regulation applies to you. And even if it doesn't, it's setting the standard that other jurisdictions are following. In this video, we'll break down the EU AI Act's risk-based classification system, the obligations it creates, and how it compares to NIST AIR MF. We'll also map the global regulatory landscape so you understand what's coming beyond Europe. This is Domain 1 territory, and it's essential AAIR content. Let me give you a sense of why this regulation deserves your full attention. The EU AI Act applies to developers who build AI systems, deployers who put them into use, and importers who bring non-EU AI into the European market. That's an enormous scope. If your organization uses an AI system for any purpose that touches EU individuals, customers, employees, suppliers, the Act lightly applies. And here's what makes it particularly significant. The EU AI Act is the regulatory template. The UK, Canada, Brazil, Japan, regulators globally are watching the EU's approach and building on it. Understanding the EU AI Act is not just about compliance today. It's about understanding the direction of travel for AI regulation worldwide. For AAIR Domain 1, the EU AI Act is the primary regulatory reference for compliance and legal considerations. Exam questions will test whether you understand the Act structure, which systems fall into which categories, and what obligations those categories create. Let's walk through it systematically. The EU AI Act organizes AI systems into 4 risk tiers, and the tier determines the regulatory obligations. The highest tier is prohibited AI. These are uses that the EU has determined are too harmful to allow under any circumstances. Social scoring by governments, real-time biometric surveillance in public spaces, and AI systems that exploit vulnerabilities to manipulate behavior are all prohibited. Full stop. Then comes high-risk AI, and this is where most organizations' compliance work will concentrate. High-risk AI includes systems used in critical infrastructure, hiring and recruitment, credit scoring, healthcare, educational assessment, law enforcement, and border control. These systems face strict obligations because their failure can cause serious harm to individuals. Limited risk AI, like chatbots, must be transparent. Users must know they're interacting with an AI. That's the primary obligation at this tier. And minimal risk AI, spam filters, recommendation engines, most internal analytics, faces no specific obligations under the Act. The classification exercise is itself a risk management activity. Knowing where your AI systems fall in this taxonomy and documenting that assessment is a governance requirement. If your organization operates a high-risk AI system under the EU AI Act, the compliance obligations are substantial. First, a mandatory risk management system must be established and maintained throughout the AI system's lifecycle, not just at deployment. Second, data governance requirements specify that training data must be relevant, representative, and free of known biases. This isn't aspirational, it's a legal requirement, and organizations must be able to demonstrate compliance. Third, human oversight is mandatory. High-risk AI systems must be designed so that humans can meaningfully intervene and override AI decisions. A system that technically allows override but makes it practically impossible doesn't meet this requirement. Fourth, high-risk AI systems must be registered in the EU AI Act database before being placed on the market. This creates a public registry of high-risk AI, a significant transparency requirement. And technical documentation, logging capabilities, and transparency to users round out the core obligations. The compliance burden for high-risk AI is significant, and risk professionals are central to managing it. If you're working in or advising an organization that deploys high-risk AI, understanding these obligations is not optional. It's your professional responsibility. Let me put these two side by side because the AAIR exam often tests whether candidates understand both. The most fundamental difference is that NIST AIRMF is voluntary guidance, while the EU AI Act is binding law with financial penalties for non-compliance. Fines can reach 30 million euros or 6% of global turnover for the most serious violations. From a structural standpoint, NIST is principles-based. It gives you a process framework and asks you to apply it. The EU AI Act is prescriptive. It specifies specific obligations for specific AI system categories. But here's what's important to recognize. They're not in conflict. Both emphasize governance, transparency, human oversight, and accountability. Many organizations use NIST AIRMF as the operational framework for implementing the governance structures required by the EU AI Act. In practice, alignment with NIST can help demonstrate due diligence under the Act, even though it doesn't substitute for compliance. For risk professionals, this means you don't need to choose between them. Understanding both and knowing how they complement each other is precisely what Domain 1 of AAIR tests. The EU AI Act is the most developed AI regulation, but it's far from the only one. Let's map the global landscape quickly, because AI risk is global and regulatory exposure doesn't stop at borders. The UK has chosen a pro-innovation, sector-led approach. Rather than creating a dedicated AI regulator, the UK government asks existing sector regulators, financial services, healthcare, data protection, to apply their existing mandates to AI within their sectors. It's lighter touch than the EU approach, but it's evolving. China has moved quickly with a series of AI-specific regulations, algorithmic recommendation rules, generative AI regulations, and facial recognition restrictions. Chinese AI regulation is detailed and sector-specific and applies to AI affecting Chinese users regardless of where the developer is located. India's DPDP Act 2023 doesn't address AI directly, but its requirements for processing personal data have direct implications for AI systems that train on or process personal information. For risk professionals operating in India, DPDP compliance is an AI risk management requirement. And internationally, the G7 Hiroshima AI process and the Global Partnership on AI are building shared principles for responsible AI, creating soft law alignment across major economies. Monitoring regulatory development is itself an AI risk management activity. The landscape is moving fast. Let me close this video with a framing that I find really helps risk professionals approach regulatory compliance strategically. Compliance is not the end goal, it's a floor. The organizations that treat regulatory requirements as a ceiling will do exactly what the law requires, nothing more, tend to be the ones scrambling when regulations tighten or incidents expose gaps. The approach I recommend is to treat regulatory compliance as a structured risk management activity. Start with a gap assessment. Map your current AI practices against applicable requirements and identify what's missing. Then, prioritize remediation based on risk. The highest risk gaps get addressed first. Build compliance checkpoints into the AI lifecycle: design, procurement, deployment, and monitoring. Don't rely on a periodic compliance review to catch everything. And most importantly, monitor regulatory evolution continuously. AI law is moving faster than most enterprise policy cycles. The organizations that stay ahead of regulatory change avoid scrambling, and more importantly, they avoid the reputational and financial consequences of being caught unprepared. For AAIR candidates, regulatory compliance knowledge is not about memorizing rules. It's about applying a risk management discipline to an evolving regulatory landscape.